KWT slaying.
Shalom family, welcome to another teaching from Tail Ministries. The title of this teaching is The Rise of the Two Hidden Kingdoms, Magog and True Israel. Family, if you remember a few months ago, I did a video called The Coming Two Kingdoms, The Fall of Babylon. And if you haven't watched that, I suggest you go back and look at that video. I did another video later on called Tartaria 2.0. Now, this particular teaching is going to hang off of those two teachings. You have to understand those two teachings to sort of get a picture of what I believe is happening. Now, remember, family, this is what I believe is happening because I'm not God. We see through a glass darkly, but this is what I'm seeing. Okay, so take that to note. And maybe, for you all who have been following our teachings, it's going to make sense to you. Okay, some people who have not followed our teachings, it might be confusing. Okay, so we need to get into this, and we're going to learn some things that is sort of like, I guess in the beginning, hard to believe, but hey, think about it. In the beginning, they hid who we were, right? They also hid Magog. Now, everyone had taught about, the land of Magog because of the Ezekiel 38 war. Now, there's something I'm going to show you in this teaching that, is sort of mind-blowing in a sense, not as much as who we are, but it's really interesting. And the only reason I can see that they hid this is because they're concerned or afraid of people truly knowing what's going to happen in the last days, so they try to hide things, right? That's just my opinion. I don't know their true motivation, so let's continue. Recap. So let's talk about a few things we've shown in our past prophecy teachings. America, Babylon will be destroyed by the land of the north and its allies. Number 2, true Israel will be regathered to the wilderness of the people and then to Zion or Jerusalem. There will be 2 major kingdoms in the last days, the 10-nation confederacy and the Israelite returnees. And number 4, the Revelation 2:9 people will return to Tartaria or Ukraine. Now, this part 4 here is really important for this teaching here because we know about the Khazars, but this particular area or region, if you look at Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is sort of, hide things, right? They call it a region, and we're going to get into this. But it was really an empire, a nation, not too much, after World War II did they hide this empire, which seemed to have existed, for a long time. So, and when you start putting the pieces together, you start to see, okay, well, this is Magog territory. Okay. And we know what happens in Ezekiel 38 after we've been back in the land for a while. We've covered that. If you don't know what's going to happen in Ezekiel 38, we have a video called Ezekiel 38. And just a note, family, YouTube has changed their policies. So I don't know what's going to happen to these videos. You might want to download them. We're going to try to move a lot of them over to BitChute. We have that channel. So just make sure if you like what we have, you might want to download the ones you like or all of them Hopefully, we should be able to get them over to BitChute, just in case something happened. But who knows what's going to happen in this world. Introduction. In this teaching, we will discuss what is going on in Central Asia and why China is building the Silk Road. We will discuss who are the Tartars and why their kingdom has been hidden from the world. We will discuss how Khazaria 2.0, which is the video I mentioned, fits in with the overall plan of the fake Jews. Finally, we will discuss why there is a connection between the Tartars and Magog of Gog and Magog war of Ezekiel 38. Okay, so in my opinion, all of this ties together, right? There's a different power base happening, and as I mentioned before, right, what's going to happen is Babylon, America, is going to be destroyed. Okay, we're going to leave here, according to Genesis 15, with goods and gold and much substance. Okay, so. But there's a lot going on here that is just interesting. So we'll continue. So the warning from Putin. Maybe Jews or minorities behind U.S. election interference. Now, when you read this title, this is a recent publication. When you read this title, first thing that pops in your mind, okay, Jews. Okay, we know who they believe Jews are. Or minorities. Usually when you use the term minorities, you're saying black folks, right? That's what we think, right? Because they always say you're minorities, or you're, or maybe they're talking about, Mexicans and things like that. But who they're talking about is the Tartars. Now you're gonna say, well, who's the Tartars, right? I never was taught about the Tartars growing up. Were you? So, Jews and Tartars. Now here's the article, fam. Jewish groups are criticizing Russian President Vladimir Putin after he suggested Russian minorities such as Jews or Tartars could be behind alleged meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Putin was speaking with NBC News' Megyn Kelly as she repeatedly asked him about Russian involvement in the election. Last month, Special Counsel Robert Mueller indicted 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian entities for allegedly meddling in the 2016 presidential election, charging them with conspiracy to defraud the United States. At one point, Putin suggested that other ethnic groups may have been involved. Maybe they're not even Russians, he said. Maybe they're Ukrainians. Listen to him. Maybe they're Ukrainians, Tartars, Jews, just with Russian citizenship. Even that needs to be checked. Maybe they have dual citizenship or maybe a green card. Maybe it was the Americans who paid them for this work. How do we know? I don't know. Putin's comment caught the attention of the Anti-Defamation League. President Putin bizarrely has resorted to the blame game by pointing the finger at Jews and other minorities in his country, said Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO and ADL. In a statement, it is deeply disturbing to see the Russian president giving new life to classic anti-Semitic stereotypes that have plagued his country for hundreds of years. So, have you ever heard of the Tartars? I'm just asking. I haven't. I've never really heard of the Tartars. I've heard of many other ethnic groups, but I've never heard of the Tartars. So why would Putin mention the Ukrainians, the Tartars, and the Jews? What do the Tartars have to do with anything? And how are they synonymous with the Jews involving themselves in the U.S. election? How are they synonymous with the Ukrainians? What connection do they have? Why would Putin associate these three? Because they are the same people, in a sense. Family, we're going to talk about a hidden history here. Tartars, the hidden kingdom. The Tartars belong to a kingdom called Tartaria in Central Asia. Their kingdom has been hidden from history by the Soviet Union and, of course, those who control the media. Who controlled the media, family? And why would they want to hide the Tartars? Because they're the same people. They're connected with the Khazarians. Tartaria ties in everything from Ukraine all the way to parts of China. It was one of the biggest empires in Central Asia. Why would they want to hide who these people are? What connection do they have to the Jews of Khazaria? Valid questions. Seeing how most of us, I know I haven't, and I'm well read. I've never heard of the Tartars before. Never knew that there was a Tartaria kingdom or empire. Why hide it? Don't believe what Wikipedia says about Tartaria. Here's what Wikipedia says. Tartary, or Great Tartary, was a historical region in Asia located between the Caspian Sea, Ural Mountains, and the Pacific Oceans. Tartary was a blanket term used by Europeans for the areas of Central Asia, North Asia, and East Asia unknown to European geography. It encompassed the vast region of the Pontic Caspian Steppe, the Volga Urals, the Caucasus, Siberia, Inner Asia, Mongolia, and Manchuria. And yes, family, Tartaria did cover these areas, but Tartaria was an empire. It was a country. It was not a region. It's like the United States, right? The United States is in control of all of these states here, right? It's like the Roman Empire when the Roman Empire covered many countries. It was an empire. I'm going to prove it. Tartaria was a country. Wikipedia is wrong when it tells you that Tartaria was a blanket term used to identify Central and Northern Asia. You will see that Tartaria was a country and its existence was hidden by the Soviet Union and the world media. Why would they want to hide this nation and its people? Why would the Jews of Khazaria not want to be known as well as being a part of this empire? I believe it is because of who these people are prophetically. This is the Grand Tartary family. Okay? Use Google because Google's your friend. This is the Grand Tartary. Now, they stated that this was just a region that the Europeans used to identify an area. Okay? And we know this area is made up of multiple countries. My point that I'm making here is that Tartaria was an empire, not a region that they used to identify. It was a country. 1701, a system of geography. The country of Tartary, called Great Tartary, to distinguish it from the lesser in Europe, has for its boundaries on the west the Caspian Sea and Moscovic Tartary on the north, and Scythian or Tartarian Sea on the east, the Sea of the Calamaches, and the Strait of Zepho, I guess, I can't make that out. And on the south, China, India, or the dominions of the Great Mongol and Persia. So that it is apparently the largest region of the whole continent of Asia, extending itself farthest both towards the north and east in the modern maps. It is placed within the 70th and 170th degree longitude, excluding Moscovic Tartary. That's the Moscow area. They call it Moscovic Tartary, as also between the 40th and 72 degree of northern latitude. So here, family, it specifically says the country of Tartary called Great Tartary. Okay. Now, granted, we could say, okay, well, they also say it's the largest region. Okay. But at the same time, it called it a country. And a country that has a people, a country that has a language, it's a country. It is an empire. This is the flag of that empire. It's a griffin. So this region had a flag. If it was a region, why does it have a flag? If it was, only countries have flags. Only empires have flags. Only nations have flags. Why does it have a flag if it was just a region, as Wikipedia said? Britannica, Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and west. This is called Great Tartary. The Tartars, who lie south of Muscovy, and that's Moscow in my opinion, and Siberia, are those of Astrakhan, Circassia, and Dagestan, situated northwest of the Caspian Sea. The Kalmyk Tartars, who lie between Siberia and the Caspian Sea. The Uzbek Tartars and Mongols, who lie north of Persia and India. And lastly, those of Tibet, who lie northwest of China. So Tartary was broken up into different regions or sections of Tartars. Some were Mongols, some were Uzbek, okay? But they all were under this empire called Tartary. It was a vast country in the northern parts of Asia. It was called Tartaria or Tartary. And I'm going to continue to prove my point that Tartary was a country. Now, why they hid it, who knows? My guess is because they represent Magog. Now, this is from the CIA. It was released under the Freedom of Information Act. Or let us take the matter of history, which along with religion, language, and literature constitute the core of a people's cultural heritage. Here again, the communists have interfered in a shameless manner. For example, on August 9, 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party, sitting in Moscow, issued a directive ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria, to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians in dealing with Tartar history. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of Tartar-Russian relations. And this was so isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians on orders of the Communist Party have rewritten history to distort the facts so that the Russians appear always in a good light. Needless to say, histories which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed, so that the present and future generations of Muslims are forever denied the chance of learning the true facts of their nation's past. So, just like they did to us, right? They removed our names from amongst the world. We were replaced by a different group of people, okay? This empire or country called Tartaria was hidden from the world. It was falsified, as you see in this CIA document, and you can go look at it yourself. I gave you the reference. Now, the difference I have between what this CIA person says is that he says it was to hide what they did to the Muslims. And maybe that's partly true. But if you use logical reasoning, right, you will realize that the vast territory that the Tartaria Empire covered people who were not only Muslims but Christians as well, and maybe other religions. Okay, so when you're removing this whole empire, you're not just removing, what was done to the Muslims. You're removing what was done to other people and nations. Now, let's ask this question. If it was to falsify their history as stated here, which I agree with, right? Is it just to hide what you've done to one group of people when you've done filth to other people? I mean, we know what they've done to, the Polish and other people, and we know the Soviet Union's history. So what's the real reason? And not only that, why didn't the U.S. media counter this alteration of history? If the CIA knew they were falsifying Tartary history, which was a country, which was a nation, which was an empire, Why didn't the media in the U.S. or in the West come out and say, Tartaria was this? It was a country. It was not a region. And here's what happened. Because the powers that controlled the Soviet Union controls the U.S. media, and they did not want it to get out. Why? And this is my opinion. Why? Because they knew that this area, this landmass of Tartaria, right, would be rebuilt. They knew that this is the prophesied land of Magog, who was the descendant of Japhet. And I'm going to prove that too. So connect this with Kazaria 2.0 video that I did. Connect this with the coming two kingdoms that I talk about. Now, some of you all might, say, well, there's 2 feet on the statue of Daniel. Yes, there is. There's East and West. And remember, there was the East and West Roman Empire. It was still one empire. So I'm including those East and West as one group of people, right? I'm including them as the East, which is Central Asia, as the land of Magog. The other foot on the statue is the Western Empire, the Western nations who have been tormenting and persecuting us for generations and centuries. So we need to understand, family, that if you look at what's happening on the world scene, some things just don't make sense. Like, for instance, we know for a fact, right? We know for a fact that there are protests in almost every nation throughout the world. And if it's not, there is coming. We know for a fact that America is trying to get rid of their president, called Donald Trump. I say their president because he's not my president. I mean, he's the president of the U.S., but none of these presidents are my president or ever was my president because they have no love for me or my people. So my question to you is, why all the chaos? Why all the turmoil? Not only is Trump being kicked out, or at least they're trying to. Same thing with Netanyahu in Israel. He's dealing with trying to maintain power as well. Why is this? Is global chaos in almost every country throughout the world. Why? Because they want to destroy the current system. And the current system is going to go away. The Western control of the world is going to go away. And it's going to shift to the East. And not only is it going to shift to the East, it's going to shift to Africa. Because this is part of the fulfillment of the dry bones. And you're going to see, right, as we go along, what their plan is. What their plan is for Central Asia. And this all fulfills Bible prophecy. Do you think it's a coincidence that Africa is rising now? Do you think it's a coincidence that Africa is asking their people to return from the diaspora right now? Do you think it's a coincidence that the diaspora is calling for reparations globally right now? I mean, we're not just half doing it, right? We're like, we got ADOS movement, we got other movements saying we want our stuff. We want our check. Now it's more than a check, but we want it now. It's all prophetic. Which boggles my mind how, like, I see so many black women, who are moving to the occult or moving, especially the ones who go to Africa, they move into ancestral worship and voodoo, and even some of the guys, you know what I'm saying? They're moving into voodoo, and they're moving into a spiritual system that they don't know about because they say their ancestors did it. Yes, your ancestors did that. Which is the reason why we were kicked out of Jerusalem to begin with, because they worshipped other gods and statues, which is why we were kicked out of our homeland into the nations as slaves. But yet, all of these people, I'm seeing this movement going back into the occult. I'm like, what logic is that there? I'm like, apparently you had no revelation, no spiritual dynamic, no spiritual insights to see the Bible happening right before your eyes, and you go and worship statues? I digress. Kingdom of Tartary Empire. The Kingdom of Tartary covered a huge landmass which would include various ethnic groups. If this is the case, Tartars were not just Muslims, they were various ethnic groups like I mentioned. Some of the ethnic groups were Mongols, whom many consider Asian or Chinese looking. Others were Caucasians, like the inhabitants of modern Russia and Ukraine. The Tartary Empire was broken up into several sections. You're going to see. So these are modern Tartars in Russia, literally called Tartars. These people right here that you're looking at are called Tartars. Never knew of these people before. Okay, they're hidden. And where do they live? Near the Volga region, which is where the main area of the Tartary Empire was run. The Grand Tartary. Why isn't anybody talking about this? Why is there such a need to hide these people? Because they're descendants of Japhet. They're descendants of Magog. So who are the Tartars really? To find out who these hidden people truly are and their connection with modern Jews, we need to look at more information about the empire, Tartaria. This is called Microcosmos, a little description of the great world by Peter Halen, 1600 to 1662. Tartaria, the hidden nation. Tartaria is bounded on the east with the Eastern Ocean. On the west with Moscow, and Mordovia. The north with the Scythic or Scythians or frozen ocean. And on the south with the Mare Caspium, the hill Taurus, and the wall of China. So this is the territory all the way to the wall of China. This country extended itself from east to west, 5,400 miles. Listen, family. This country extended itself from east to west, 5,400 miles, and from north to south, 3,600 miles. This country was of old known by the name of Scythia, whose inhabitants were the posterity of Magog. So they were known as Scythia. Or have you heard of the Scythians? I've heard of the Scythians, whose posterity of Magog, their ancestors were the Magogians, the son of Japhet called first Magogans, afterward Since, from Sinthus, their first king. The several inhabitants were first Macedonians, so the first of those several inhabitants was Macedonians, men who rejoiced most at their parents' death. So these were evil people, of whose heads trimly wrought and rounded with gold, they used to make their kerosene cups. 2. The Agathri, or Agathri, if I pronounce that right. That's a bit difficult. Who used to paint themselves, every one the more noble he was, the more deformed and stained, for which cause some have conceded our picks, to have drawn their original from hence. Number 3, the nomads, who having no houses, used there to abide longest, where the fodder for their cattle was best, which being once consumed, they departed. The Axiasi, who were very valiant, but withal barbarous and inhumane, using in their wares to drink the blood of him who they first slew, even as it distilled out of their wounds. So they drunk blood like vampires. Number 5, Galoni, who used to apparel themselves with the skins of their enemies' heads, and their horses with the skin of their bodies. And 6, the Nuri, of whom believe it who list. It is reported that they could turn themselves into wolves and against resume their true being. So this is what they believed of those people. I can't tell you if any of this is true. I'm open-minded. I know that angels can take on form. I know the Bible talks about a serpent seed. Use your own brain, family. This is how they describe these people. Now note, Tartaria, the word Tartaria is similar to a word we already know. Tartarus, the deep dark dungeon where the angels abide. Now look at the description of the people here in Tartaria. I'm just saying. It's interesting to say the least. Tartaria country, the country by reason of the many rivers running through and sometimes overflowing it, was very abundant in grass, but it few so deficient that their fires were made of bones instead of woods. So their fires were made of bone instead of wood. What does that remind you of, family? Those little festivals they have here in the United States, out there in the desert, burning wood. They call them bonfires. This name of Scythia extending itself into Europe, even unto all regions lying north of the Danubis, which is the Danube River, called also Sarmatia, and Scythia Europea, and so populous had it always been, that is by the different authors styled the mother of all inundations. Vagina, gentium, and officiana genoris humani. So Vagina, gentium is the womb of the white civilization. From hence indeed the Huns, the Herus, the Franks are the French, Bulgarians, Ciceronians, Swiss, Burgundians, Turks, the Tartarians. So if Tartaria was just a region and not a kingdom and not a country, why are they defined as a separate group of people? Because we know the Franks were a group of people. We know the Turks are a group of people. We know the Bulgarians are a single group of people. The Dutch, the Cimbers, the Normans, the Alemannies, the Ostrogoths, the Tigorines, the Lombards. We know the Lombards are. England, the Vandals, the Visigoths. They're all related to the same people. Have swarmed like locusts around about this ball. So they spread themselves all over and spoiled the fairest provinces of all. Sound like today, right? So cradle of the white race, Teutonic mythology, University of Nottingham. It has been called the Indo-Germanic, the Indo-European, and the Aryan family of tongues. The theory that the cradle of the Aryan race stood in Central Asia near and at that regions inhabited by the ancestors of the Romans. And north of, skip that, gentium, vagina, nationum. The source of races, the mother of nations. So what they're saying here is this is the nation where the white race came from. This is where the white races started. That's what they're saying. I'm not saying it. This is what they're saying. And this makes sense because we know that most of the white people are descendants of Japhet or Magog. Now, if you look at some of our other studies, we talk about how, Esau mingled himself with the Romans. Now, we know here it says that the regions here were inhabited by the ancestors of the Romans. So, if you go back look at some of the other studies, we can see why, okay, it's hard to distinguish Esau now. Esau is mixed with these people. I'm not trying to be racial, family. I'm just giving you what's here. Deal with Reidenberg or whoever, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm just giving you what's here. We need to know the truth because they've been lying to us forever. Magog. As we saw, the Tatarian Empire is the womb of the white race. At least Central Asia is. It is also the people who are descendant of the kingdom of Magog. These are the people who are to invade the land of Zion or Jerusalem during the true Gog-Magog war. These are the people who will be led by the Antichrist to invade in Revelation 13 and Ezekiel 38. These are the people in the future who will invade us after we have gone back to the land and we're at rest and we're without bars and gates because of all the goods and the cattle and the gold and the silver. You got to go look at the other studies if you want to make sense of this. This is very important of what's happening today. It is obvious that America is declining. It is obvious that Europe is declining. It is obvious that the East is rising. It is even obvious that Africa is rising. A white kingdom and a black kingdom. As I've shown in the video, the coming two kingdoms and the fall of Babylon, after the destruction of America, power will shift to the 10-nation confederacy. It is my opinion that the new power structure will be the Eastern and Western European powers. That's the new Gentile power structure. It's going to be Eastern and Western. Most of the power is going to be in the Eastern Empire. This power will include China. The plan is to dominate African people globally. However, it will not work out as expected because God will step in and we will see the second Exodus first. The final Gentile kingdom will be the 5 toes of the Eastern Tartarian powers or Magogian powers and the 5 toes of a reduced power of Western nations, which is really the Western European powers, versus the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is the African black people, okay, with mainly black nations with a mixture of Gentiles. So Gentiles are going to live amongst us as well. Not a whole bunch, but some are going to come back with us. So we're going to have another mixed multitude. I'm just telling you what I see. Racism. I know how this sounds, and many will think this is a black supremacist teaching. However, I'm showing you what I see. This is why the world is pushing hatred of the races. They really want an all-white world, which would include Asian people of Mongolian and non-Mongolian features. I'm just showing you what I see. So this is why they're pushing the racial hatred and the killing of Israel. Because they don't want us a part of this new system and this new empire that they're building. But when the Most High steps in and he removes us from these nations with his outstretched arm, which means his power will be seen. Many of them gonna fear. Okay, and that's why they're gonna say, I'm gonna follow you because I hear you're a Yehudi. I hear that God's with you. Because God is gonna show the world who his people is. While at the same time, right before, they're gonna try to kill us. It's the same thing that happened in ancient Egypt. Pharaoh tried to kill the Jews, our ancestors, right before Moses came. And then God showed forth his power. It's going to happen again. Mind you, family, this probably going to have to be moved over to BitChute. Anytime we talk about race, people don't like it. Anytime you talk about their plans against us, people don't like it. Anytime you talk about the fact that black people are going to no longer be last, people don't like it. So this is the final Gentile kingdom on earth, East and West European nations. It is feet, partly of iron and partly of clay. This is the final kingdom on earth before Christ comes to get us. Now, I believe we have a lot of time before the Messiah comes back, right? And for the, and we're going to do a teaching on this before what we call the rapture occurs. Just so you know, Teo believes the rapture is nothing but the resurrection, the first resurrection. That's it. The rapture is the first resurrection. And there is no such thing as a pre-trib rapture. And we'll get into that in the future. My brother's going to do a teaching on it. So a power shift. The new power of the Gentile kingdom will be the Eastern power structure. The old Tartarian empire is being rebuilt. This is why China is building the new Silk Road. Here's the Silk Road, family. Look at the picture over on the right of the Grand Tartary. And remember, it went all the way to the walls of China. And where do we see the Silk Road? I'm just saying, it's that Tartarian Empire. It's being rebuilt. I'm just saying. You tell me. Crimean Tartars and Jews. Not all these migrations were voluntary. They included large numbers of prisoners of war, such as Crimean Tartars, who were put to cultivate the estates of Lithuania and Polish landlords in the conquered southern provinces. At the close of the 14th century, the Lithuanian Principality stretched from the Baltic to the Black Sea. But in the 15th century, the Ottoman Turks, conquerors of the Byzantium, advanced northward, and the landlords transferred the people from their estates in the border areas further inland. Among the populations thus forcibly transferred was a strong contingent of Karaites. That's Karaite Jews, the fundamentalist Jewish sect which rejected rabbinical learning, according to a tradition which was survived among Karaites into modern times. Their ancestors were brought to Poland by the great Lithuanian warrior prince Vytautas, or Vitold, at the end of the 14th century as prisoners of war from Sukat in the Crimea. So where did they come from? They came from Sukat in the Crimea. In favor of this tradition speaks the fact that Vitold, in 1388, granted a charter of rights to the Jews of Troki, and the French traveler Delanoy found there a great number of Jews speaking a different language from the Germans and natives. That language was and still is what? A Turkish dialect. What does that mean? Yiddish. In fact, the nearest among living languages to the lingua franca Cumanica, which was spoken in the former Khazar territories at the time of the Golden Horde. This is from the 13th tribe by Arthur Kessler. So they were in Crimea. What's happening now in Crimea? What's happening in Ukraine? Whose territory was that? It was the Karaite Jews. What did the teaching about the Caesarea 2.0 say? It says that they are planning to move from Israel, or what they call Israel, back to Ukraine. Why are they so interested in the land that the Russians have called Crimea? Because that's their homeland. It is part of Ukraine. They plan on going back. And this is why that whole Tartarian empire is being rebuilt, because it is the kingdom of Magog being rebuilt. Tartaria was divided. Tartaria is now usually divided into these parts: Pre-Copensin, Asiaticum, Antiquam, Zagatai, Catai. So Tartaria was divided into these. Tartaria Precompensis contained all Taurica, Chersonsus, and the Asiatican banks of Tanais. The chief cities are Precops, which the whole nation is called Precompsis. So the chief city was called Precops, which is where they get that word for that area called Precopsis. Crim, the ancient seat of the Tartarian rulers, whence named they were the Crimean Tartars. Remember, we were talking about the Crimean Tartars. That's where the Karaite Jews came from. This is the seat of the Tartarian rulers in Crimea. Number 3, the ox cow, the residence of the present prince. 4, Kaffa, anciently Theodosia, a town of great traffic, which the Muslims, the great, Muhammad, which is Muhammad, the great, took from the Genoese. The Tartarians were first placed in the country by Bido, a brave captain which subdued all Moscovia, or Moscow, that area. Muhammad the Great contracted with them a league that the Tartars should aid the Turks on all occasions with 60,000 men. So the Tartars had an agreement with the Turks that they would help them in their wars, 60,000 men. And those to demand no pay, to requite which the Tartar is to succeed in the Turkish Empire. So that was with the Ottoman Turks. If at any time the issue male should happen. See, we're not taught these things. We're not taught these things. And so when you see things on the world scene, they don't make sense. But to them it does, because they know their history. Swore the Tartars to fail. After this covenant, the great Turk used, and still he does, to send the new elected Cham a banner as a token of his approbation of their election. The men of this country, as of the other four parts, are swarthy. They're black. Not so much by the heat of the sun. So they're black, not so much by the heat of the sun as their own floodishness. Ill-favored, thick-lipped, flat-nosed, broad shoulders, swift-foot, laborious, vigilant, barbarous everywhere in behavior, especially in Antiqua and the Asiatica. In religion, they are some pagans, some Muslims. The women are suitable to the men, wanting a scorning moni, adorning themselves with gewgaws of copper, feathers, and laton. Who adorn themselves with feathers and gewgaws of copper? Could this be the Native American Indians that migrated to the Americas from Asia? That's what the DNA says. That the Indians migrated from Asia to the Americas. Their DNA ties back there. So being black does not make you Israel. Big lip, thick nose, broad shoulders. Stop saying people Israel just because they're black. Stop saying people Israel just because they got a thick nose or thick lip, flat nose. We see here there's a certain group of the Tartars was that way. The people in America who are Native Indians or Native Americans have no connection to the true Hebrew Israelites of the Bible, who are Africans. The pictures that they show you of black Indians are after the cameras were made, which was after we were already slaves in this land and held slaves by the Cherokees and other Indian tribes, and intermingled with them and had babies with them. That's why some of them look like Africans. Stop lying to people. Crimean Tartars are a Turkic ethnic group and nation who are indigenous people of Crimea and formed in the Crimean Peninsula during the 13th and 17th centuries, primarily from Cumans that appeared in Crimea in the 10th century, with strong contributions from all the people who ever inhabited Crimea. Since 2014, Crimean Tartars have been officially recognized as an indigenous people of Ukraine. Crimean Tartars are considered as a national minority, not an indigenous people, by the Russian Federation. So why does Putin say the Tartars and the Jews had something to do with the election? They are the same people. They're related. They're from the same territories. They're from Ukraine and Crimea. See, people say things and we overlook it. We don't ask why he's bringing the Tartars in this. Who are the Tartars? Rise of the Magog Empire. We saw that the Tartars are the descendants of the Magog Empire. This is predicted to be the one of the end time empires to attack those who have returned from their captivity worldwide. If you don't understand this, go back and look at the Ezekiel 38 video we did. If you want to understand also why these two nations, the two empires at the end of the age is going to be the Gentile nations and the Hebrew nation, the true Hebrews. The ones who return back from captivity worldwide. God's kingdom and Satan's kingdom. Gog and Magog are rebuilding their power structure. It's the end of the Western power structure. Now, as you saw, there's still going to be 5 on the West. I mean, they're not going to disappear. America will. But it's going to be the final empire structure is going to be the 10-toe confederacy, which is the last empire of the statue of Daniel, the last Gentile. Because remember, all of the nations of the statue of Daniel are Gentile nations. The last Gentile nation is going to be the 10-toe confederacy. That's what's forming now. When Russia and China and their allies attack Babylon, Babylon will be destroyed. The power will shift to the east and to Africa, where the true 12 tribes are located. Now, of course, we're scattered here amongst the nations, but we're going back. And there's still Judah there on the continent of Africa. Don't listen to these people who tell you we're indigenous to the Americas. That's silly and stupid. They have no proof. They cannot prove it. But so many people follow them. So many people contact me and say, well, you know, Teo, this is the land we're from. Jerusalem is here in the Americas. Oh, my goodness. Really now? Come on. Then when I ask them to bring their proof, they disappear. Then when I ask them, yo, you want to debate it? They disappear every single time because they know they will lose. They know they will lose. Everybody know Teo does their homework. The Israelite returning, Ezekiel 26, 24 to 32. So this is to bring some of these scriptures back to your memory. Okay? This is the other empire, the returnees. For I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean from all your filthiness and from all your idols. Will I cleanse you, all of you people who going back to worshiping your idols? Oh my goodness. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes. And ye shall keep my judgments and do them. And ye shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and ye shall be my people, and I will be your God, or your Elohim. I will also save you from all your uncleanness, and I will call for the corn and will increase it, and lay no famine upon you. And I will multiply the fruit of the tree and the increase of the field, that ye shall receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen. Then shall you remember your own evil ways and your doings that were not good, and shall loathe yourselves in your own sight for your iniquities and for your abominations. Not for your sake do I this, saith the Lord. Be it known unto you, be ashamed, and confounded for your own ways, O house of Israel. So God says, look, I'm going to restore you. I'm going to bring you back to the land. I'm going to clean you up. And I'm doing all this not for your sake, but for mine. But he loves us. He knew all these things were going to happen and made provision. This is what's, in my opinion, going to happen soon, is the second Exodus. Everything I see lines up with the second Exodus happening soon. I'm holding to it. If it don't happen, okay. Well, but I'm holding to it. Soon is relative, I guess. Ezekiel 38. So this is the Gog Magog. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth. And all thy army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, and the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with it. This is the Ezekiel 38 war that's going to happen sometime after we have already been back in the land, after the second Exodus had occurred. If you don't fully understand this, you have to go watch the Ezekiel 38 video. In conclusion, for some reason, the Soviet Union decided to hide the existence of Tartaria. The Americans never corrected their intentional removal of this nation of people from history. Why hide them in the first place? The CIA stated it was to hide the atrocities that the Soviet Union did to these people who were Muslims. Could it be because they are the prophesied final Gentile kingdom? Could it be that as true Israel arises, so does the kingdom of Gog and Magog? And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the rise of the kingdom of Gog and Magog. And initially, Africa is going to be aligned with them. We're going to get along for a while. This is all speculation, but we do know one thing. We know that the Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9 people are making preparations to return to their homeland, which is Ukraine and Crimea. We also know that China is rebuilding trade along the territory of the ancient Tatarian Empire. We also know that in the scriptures, this is the area that will attack our descendants in the future, which is the land of Magog. Family, I think I made my point. Tartaria was a country that was hidden from the world, hidden from history, removed from history. Even the CIA documents state thus. The question we have to ask ourselves is why? And the other question is, why did Putin throw the Tartars in with the Jews? And most of us never heard of Tartars before. It's all prophetic, all during the time that Africa is rising, all during the time that Africa is calling the diaspora to return back home, all during the time that the diaspora is asking for reparations from the world, not just America, but from the world, all at the same time that they're increasing persecution against blacks around the world, all at the same time they're killing and putting us into what they call those things, those sex trafficking things, all at the same time. All of these things are increasing. All of the turmoil, all of the lawlessness is increasing. All at the same time when the black man has risen and said, I am the true Hebrew Israelites of the Bible. Is it coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. So family, are you ready? Is your heart ready? Is your mind ready? See, some people have that callous attitude about these things, and some of them have that weak relationship with the Messiah. And things are going to get so heated that people are going to fall away from the faith. Like many of these women out there who's turning to voodoo and turning to the occult and divination and all these different types of religious practices that's not biblical. The Bible tells you not to do these things. And just because our ancestors did it, and you're going and trying to repeat what they've done, you're repeating their error. Don't fall for the trick, family. Don't fall for the voodoo. Don't fall for the ancestor worship, because they were worshiping pagan gods. If you don't know by now that the scriptures are true, I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you. You might want to go back to the old ways, not those ways, not the pagan ways, but the Hebrew nation ways that none of your people want to talk about. None of the African vlogs want to talk about the Hebrews who exist in Africa. They don't want to talk about the Limbas. They don't want to talk about the Yabir. They don't want to talk about all these people who have a history of being known as Hebrews, being known as Jews who are black. They don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about Africans. Well, Africa is a continent. And all the people on that continent are not the same people. So here's what's coming, family. There's a huge shift coming soon. The rise of Magog is coming soon. The rise of Israel, the true Hebrews, who are African people, is coming soon. You might want to share this video with people because it's about to happen soon. Everything's lining up as I think they should. Like I say, I'm not God, so I'm not saying I'm 100%. I'm just telling you what I see. So if you like what we do, family, support us at Patreon, www.patreon.com/TEOTW. That's the end of the world. And I thank you, family, for those who do support us. You know, this is a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. And it's hard, too, when you're not at your full health. I mean, I'm getting better, but I'm not 100%. You know? I thank those who, you know, who appreciate the food being prepared and set before you. You know, who decide, you know what, I'm going to give a little back. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. We thank the Most High for you. Love your family with the love of the Messiah. Peace and blessings, Israel. Your captivity is ending.
We now return you to regular programming.